Awesome. Uh, yeah, so if people don't know Nir, he's written three books now, Hooked, Indistractable, and Beyond Belief. This last one feels like it's sort of a shift away from like the devices and the attention,
Mm,
but perhaps at a deeper level. So it was really cool to see that evolution. Definitely enjoyed the book. Excited to chat with
thanks.
you. I put the topics around um, a sort of your book, beliefs, all those things. Also thought it'd be interesting to talk about publishing.
Mm,
You went from self-published to doing a deal with Portfolio, which is the opposite of me, which was self-published to deciding not to work with Portfolio. Um, I think you're probably a much, much, much more successful version of an author than I am, and have built a life around it. I'm still trying to like hack a living around making that work long
yeah.
term, and we could talk about that. We also both live
Sure.
in Asia. You live in Singapore with your kids. You've
Mm,
done a lot of interesting adventures with your kids as well.
mm.
So thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for hosting.
Uh, what I'm curious, you said this book changed you
Mm,
earlier. What what was the driver? You write about your mom in this book, and I actually went through a very similar thing
mm.
that you described. We won't get into details, but was that one of the big drivers of writing the book? Like, what were some of the other things that
The
drove you to
biggest,
explore your beliefs?
yeah, the biggest driver was how I saw that knowing what to do in our life isn't enough. That I felt like we were missing something uh in trying to improve our lives. That I think the path I had followed was, well, if I just knew the answer, right? Like if I just read the right book, if I just talked to the right guru, if I just watched the right video, I'd get the answer to what I should do. And I don't think that's the problem. That and that's frankly what my second book was like. Okay, everybody seems to be distracted. Well, here's the answer. I spent 5 years researching how to overcome distraction. It's science backed. You know, I'm as about as skeptical as it gets. Everything is backed by research studies. I'm even skeptical of the research studies, so I dug into those. Only brought in the ones that I thought were actually well run and had something to offer, as opposed to there's a lot of bullshit in the social sciences. And so even when I delivered to people on a silver platter, here is the solution for distraction, for example, I would get these calls from time to time. So I do these calls with readers every week. Anybody can call me, 15 minutes. So I do an hour every week. And the calls, not every call, but maybe like 1 in 20 calls, somebody would say, "Hey, Nir, I read your book. I read Indistractable. It was really good, but it didn't work." And I would say, Why didn't it work? Tell me more. Let's go through this step by step. How did step one go for you? And they'd say, "Oh, I read step one. I just didn't do it. I didn't do step one." I'd say, "Okay, no problem. How about step two? Let's talk about step two." So, well, you know what? I read that one too, but I didn't actually do that one either. And so I thought at first there was something wrong with my writing or maybe something wrong with my readers. And then I realized that I do this too. I have bookshelves full of good advice that I haven't put into practice and consultants I pay to tell me what to do and I haven't actually done it. And so what I realize is that it's not about not knowing what to do, that there's something deeper to sustain motivation. And the conclusion I came to after 6 years of working on this book was that it's beliefs, that motivation is not a straight line from behavior to benefit, but that in order to sustain motivation, we have to understand beliefs, that beliefs are upstream of motivation. They're upstream, it turns out, even of personality. We're starting to question the big five, ocean, the openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Turns out there's evidence that shows that actually those aren't persistent personality traits either, that even those are dictated from our beliefs. And so I just thought this was a very unexplored area of psychology that I think I certainly didn't understand. And since diving deeper into, has helped me in so many ways. I'm more at peace. I suffer less. I'm happier, I would say. And so that's been really transformative.
How deep did you think about how deep to go with this? in the writing of the book in the sense
Mm.
of, I mean, you sort of say explicit assumption a few times, or your belief, I think, which is people are not accomplishing what they want. Therefore, your belief is that people don't have the right approach to accomplishing the things they want to accomplish. Did you think about like the deeper level of, well, what's behind that? Like,
Mm.
should should we be orienting around like accomplishing more? Like, how deep do you go with this stuff?
Yeah. The answer I got in my mind is I always look at the evolutionary lens. What did evolution give us? And it's a really great question. Like, why do we have limiting beliefs? Why do we have beliefs that keep us back, that keep us suffering? Um, and the answer is that that's what evolution designed. That evolution doesn't care if you're happy. Evolution does not care if you're fulfilled. Evolution does not care if you're meeting your full potential. None of that stuff is a concern of evolution. Evolution cares about whether you're alive and whether you're procreating. That's it. So by default, our brains want to keep us passive. In fact, there was a remarkable line of research at the very end of the book, but where I talk about this concept that everybody agreed upon in psychology. Is called learned helplessness. We've probably all heard of learned helplessness, that if you try and try again and you keep failing, you learn to be helpless. And this kind of explained all kinds of social phenomenon like generational poverty and all kinds of social maladies. And this research was done by Seligman and Meyer, and Seligman became president of the American Psychological Association. Like it was like gospel. Everybody believed in learned helplessness until a couple of years ago. To their credit, as good scientists, they looked at the data again, and they found that not only is learned helplessness wrong, there's no such thing as learned helplessness. Their conclusion is now 180 degrees the opposite of what they thought. That we do not learn helplessness. We are born helpless. That helplessness is our default state. And that's this whole point of what I'm saying around how our limiting beliefs, that's our brain trying to pull us back into helplessness. If you think about it, a baby is born helpless. A baby has to have help from its caretakers in order to survive. That is our default. So knowing that we are not born hopeful, we're born helpless, and we don't have to learn it. It's our default state. If we do want more, if we do want to meet our full potential, if we care about that kind of stuff, not to say we have to, but I think it's a very healthy human trait. So, like, to answer your question, there's two sides. There's one about this like macro question of should we desire, should we want? Was that kind of your question? Like, is it even worth accomplishing our goals in the first place? And then, if yes, how do we do that? And so I tackled the second part first. If yes, how do we do that? The big picture, should we even? I think the answer is also yes, because I think it is ruinous to be satisfied. It is anti-human to be contented. What do I mean by that?
Hmm.
That our trait of disquietude, of wanting more, of desire, is what makes us great as a species. If you think about it, if our ancestors met a tribe of people who were blissed out, who were happy, who had reached nirvana, who did not want more, if our ancestors would have met them 200,000 years ago on the plains of the Serengeti, what would have happened? I'll tell you exactly what would have happened. We would have killed them and eaten them. That's probably what would have happened. Because to be blissed out, to be contented, means that we're not progressing. We need that fire in our belly to create new medicine, to overturn dictators, to create life-saving technology. We need that bit of disquietude. We need that dissatisfaction. I think that's how we progress as a species. And so that's not something we want to mute away. We don't want to destroy that disquietude. We want to manage it in a healthy way where we still have the pain of desire without the suffering associated with it, so that it doesn't lead to burnout, so it doesn't lead to anxiety, so it doesn't lead to these maladaptive consequences of suffering, I think we can have both. We can have that fire in our belly without it causing suffering. And the key is, of course, belief.
So, do you think people can be satisfied and still move toward things that they want to achieve, or just move in any? It's interesting. I actually would define myself as satisfied. I don't really, um, yeah, I don't really resonate with like wanting more. Um, so under your definition, I'd be a bit anti-human.
Well, I don't I
But
don't know if
I've
it's is
also
that true?
found, well,
Like you wanted more kids. Does that mean you're satisfied with the kids you have? In a way, you are, but you also wanted
now
more
I
kids,
am.
right? Or maybe it was an accident. I don't know. I don't want to judge.
I think at two I'll be satisfied.
Okay. Okay. Or like,
Um,
did you want to write it? By the way, I'm saying,
well, I think I'm curious about the like dissatisfaction.
yeah.
Because I don't resonate with that. I don't
Mm,
really have dissatisfaction. Um, and it's interesting. There's so many high achievers that I think do suffer the most. Like, how do you pair that with like our most impressive humans? Like Elon Musk has described his life as like a toiled existence.
mm,
Um,
mm.
and so many super successful people talk about how much they struggle with like the self-judgment and things like that.
Mm.
Is there something in the belief stack where you can potentially that you thought about or interrogated around like, okay, maybe this isn't quite right, and there is different ways to move toward growth and challenge and change?
So we know that burnout has a specific formula, that the recipe for burnout is high expectations with low control. So if you want to reduce burnout, you can lower expectations, right? That's one way. That's what you're saying is kind of like, well, I don't have desires. I don't have wants. And I think that's dangerous, frankly. I don't think that gives us a you can have a decent life that way. And if that works for you, hey, I'm not here to judge anybody's the way anyone lives. But from a human level, I want high expectations. I want us to strive. I want us to achieve. And there are certain philosophies that retard that tell us to want less. And I don't think that's good for humankind. Um, Buddhism is
So
a beautiful philosophy.
you would agree with like so I love David Deutsch's frame of like all evil is just insufficient knowledge. So you're sort of like anchoring out around that sort of direction for humanity.
I'm not, I don't know. I need to think about that one a little bit further. I'm not super familiar with it. Um,
His
but
stuff's great.
yeah, no, well, we slipped off track there. Oh, we were talking about your question earlier around, is it good to want? Is it good to strive? I would say if we can maintain high expectations with higher control, with higher agency, or at least a sense of agency. And I think that's the missing piece. It's not to lower our expectations. It's to keep high expectations, keep that desire, keep that drive to improve ourselves, to improve the world, to improve others. That to me is the purpose of life, is to make the world better. That's the best I can come up with for why we're here, is to help each other. So if that's the case, I don't want to lower my expectations. I don't want to be contented with saying, well, I'm fine, screw everybody else. No, like to me, no offense, sitting and meditating doesn't help anybody. Helps you, it doesn't help others. That's not good enough. There's a reason that very few Buddhists have won the Nobel Prize. Let's face it, there's certain philosophies that pull you into passivity. Now, I'm not, like, if that serves you, again, beautiful, good for you. For me, I want that fire in the belly to make the world better for others. That's my purpose on earth. So to do that, I need to find a balance where I have high expectations. I maintain those high expectations without a loss of control. So how do I get that control? How do I get that sense of agency? I need to use my beliefs as a lens to see where I have what's called an internal locus of control. And the research is fascinating around locus of control, that there's two types: external locus of control and internal locus of control. An external locus of control says things happen to me. It's determined by factors outside of myself. An internal locus of control says I control what I do. I control what happens to me. My actions have purpose. Now, what's fascinating about the locus of control research is that people with an internal locus of control, they do better across the board. They have more friends, they contribute more to the community, they have fewer instances of mental health issues, they make more money. All the good things seem to happen to people who have an internal locus of control. Now, that's interesting, but what's really fascinating is that even when your circumstances put you at a disadvantage, even when you are discriminated against, even when you are downtrodden, even when you have every reason objectively to say, my circumstance stinks, I am disadvantaged, the studies show it still behooves you to have an internal locus of control, to believe you have agency to change things in your environment. The only circumstance where it doesn't help you is, in fact, judging others. So you want to have an internal locus of control about things that you can do, but have an external locus of control when judging others, meaning that when someone else is having a hard time or not doing whatever they desire, that you give them the grace, you give them the benefit of the doubt to say that they're operating with the best tools they have. So this is all to say that by focusing on what's in your control, what you can actually affect, that gives you that sense of agency to raise that sense of control to meet those higher expectations. So I don't think the solution is to lower expectations, is to increase our sense of agency and control.
Do you think, one last question, then like I'd love to hear questions from other people. Do you think the process of letting go of beliefs is different than sort of adopting new beliefs? I think in your book it's always about like changing beliefs. But I'm wondering if you see those as like independent processes. I think for me, I definitely went through a huge process of letting go of a lot of beliefs. And I don't think I adopted strong replacement beliefs. I'm
Interesting.
more like moved up the stack and like embrace like meta beliefs of like, okay, that belief didn't serve me, but I don't need to adopt a new belief. I can kind of just
Mm. Could you give me
float
an
a
example?
little. Um, you must suffer to succeed in the world. A work belief, right? You must like, you're not supposed to like your job. You're not supposed to enjoy it. Letting
Mm,
go of that belief is very, I think early on, I was in rejection of that belief, letting go of that belief, mourning that belief,
mm,
or just like the beliefs around like I need to be an impressive human or a
mm,
successful person. Um, I don't know if I've fully like replaced it with something as strong.
mm.
But I think that process of like letting go of beliefs actually takes quite a bit of time.
Do you think that's different from saying, I need to suffer in order to progress? What you call eliminating that belief, is that different from saying I do not need to suffer in order to progress?
It's more of like a softening. It's like, well, maybe
Okay.
that's true, and maybe it's not true. And
Hmm.
let's just see how life evolves.
Yeah. So this, what
And
you
so,
described is
yeah,
inquiry-based stress reduction. This is exactly the technique I talk about in the book that was pioneered by, well, actually, it was pioneered all the way back from Aristotle, but Byron Katie kind of popularized
the
it.
work. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, where basically what you did is you say, okay, I have this thing that feels like a fact that I have to suffer in order to progress in my work. And then you what you call softening is what I call collecting a portfolio of perspectives. So one is I have to suffer in order to progress in my work. Another is I do not have to suffer in order to progress in my work. Now that doesn't mean I have to change, because in fact the brain hates changing its mind. That's something we all need to be aware of every day. I remind myself constantly to have the intellectual humility to remind myself that your brain's default state is to hold on tooth and nail to what it believed in the past. That's what we talked about. That's what evolution wants you to do. So, in order to provide that perspective and soften the perspective, as you say, you can collect many other beliefs and say, okay, these are just lenses I can look through. It's a pair of sunglasses. I say, okay, when I go to the beach, I wear these glasses. When I go somewhere else, when I need reading glasses. So having those portfolio perspectives, whether or not they are true, I think that's the big aha for me, at least, writing this book, was that beliefs are tools, not truths. They don't have to be true. It's a different burden of evidence to demand that a belief has to necessarily be true. It just has to be useful. And so that should be the real test.
Um, Love to open it up to questions. Will, it looks like you have something at the top of your mind you're ready to ask.
I do. So from your book, you had, am I correct in saying that you were saying if people had a faith-based belief, even if they believed it or not, they performed better, or like, I'm not sure what you measured performance as, but is that correct?
Sorry, you're talking about the chapter on prayer?
Yes, yeah, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've only just got the book, but I listened to your
Okay.
podcast you did where you mentioned that. And so
Ah,
my line of thinking is, how do you align the faith or prayer based belief, I guess, with the internal and external locus of control? Because in my
mm,
mind, the faith, wherever you would like to align faith, is kind of giving that external locus of control to say, hey, I am not in control of the negative things that are happening to me. I'm offloading them to a higher power. And
yeah,
therefore, yeah, but then having that
beautiful.
internal locus of control gives you more agency and autonomy to how do you align those, I
I
guess.
love it. I love it. I see where you're going with the question. It's a terrific question, and this is actually why positive thinking doesn't work. That positive thinking, the manifesting and the vision boarding and all that stuff that's about end goals can really backfire. And the work of Gabrielle Oettingen shows this, where she connected people who were doing a visioning exercise, manifesting their future. I want abundance in my life. I want a beach body. I want love. And by doing that, they actually lowered their blood pressure, lowered their heart rate, became more relaxed, and became less likely to do what it takes to get those things. So, for example, in one study, she found that students who were manifesting getting a good grade on the exam, not only did they get they get a worse marks on their test, they got that worse mark because they didn't study as much, because they had offloaded the doing to cosmic vibrations, or there's this phrase, let go and let God. Now sometimes that's very helpful, right? Just letting go of things you cannot control, realizing what is out of your control, sometimes that's very comforting. However, when it comes to these outcomes, when we offload the doing to some kind of magical force, that ends up backfiring. When it comes, so back to your question around prayer, uh, I think what is a useful frame of reference is God helps those who help themselves versus let go and let God. So what prayer shows us is that prayer works even without faith. And so this was a big revelation, no pun intended, for me around my own practice. So I don't have a belief in the supernatural, but I still pray, because what the research finds is that prayer works. The practice of prayer is effective as a problem solving tool, whether or not you believe in the supernatural. So they did a study where they took three groups. One group were people who had a faith tradition. They were Christian or Muslim or Jewish or Buddhist. They had some kind of faith tradition. Another group were atheists or agnostics who were taught a prayer protocol. They were taught how to pray, but they were told, instead of saying the word God, you can substitute anything meaningful. It could be Mother Nature, it could be the sum of all forces, it could be the universe. You can substitute whatever you want. And then a third group was the control condition, nothing. What they found was that people who prayed had a higher pain tolerance. There's a standard pain tolerance protocol. They had a higher pain tolerance than the people who didn't pray at all, whether or not they had a faith. So there seems to be some kind of psychologically protective effects to prayer, whether or not you believe in the supernatural. So for me, it's free. It's turns out to be highly effective, and it's a wonderful problem-solving tool. Now, what do you pray for? I don't pray for the cosmic slot machine. I don't say, gimme, gimme, gimme. What I do is I focus on the attributes I need to prepare for pain. So what I don't ask myself, I don't ask God or whatever I'm praying to. I'm not sure who's listening, but when I pray, I'm not asking for things. I'm asking myself to focus on the attributes that I need to overcome this challenge. More patience, more kindness, more wisdom. That's what I'm focusing on. And in the process of prayer, I'm problem solving. This prayer has been shown to be a very effective problem solving tool versus meditation, which is a completely different practice. The process of thinking through things in contemplative silence turns out to have myriad benefits. And so what you're doing is you're focusing on, again, what's in my control. It's in my control to be more kind, to be more patient, versus what's outside of my control, exactly per your point, Will, of the things that I can't make happen, right? I can't determine whether I get sick or not. I can't determine these things that are outside of my control. I can't stop a war that's, thousands of miles away. I can pray for it, but that's not something that I can actually do anything about. So what I'm focusing on are the things, the attributes that I do have agency and control over. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I see it aligning with the mouse study, right, of hopelessness.
Mm,
So, in what I'm thinking when you're saying that is around by prayer or self-reflective thinking, I guess,
mm,
you are aligning more with a point in the future which aligns hope, right? And so that would in yeah, give you more bandwidth to endure pain or suffering. Because as you say, like with the manifesting good grades, just kind of stops you or putting the pain of studying, right? Or the pain of potentially getting bad grades back on your shoulders, which is an uncomfortable thing, which is like around, which is what striving is, right? Like if you strive for whatever it is you want to achieve, it's a really uncomfortable thought to fail at that. So if you lower the expectation, you may be more content potentially, but I guess, yeah, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the uh deciding what it is you want, I think, is the first step. So the way we find these limiting beliefs is we ask ourselves where we're stuck. So I think that's where what I've researched here for the past few years, where that becomes helpful is asking yourself, where do you have an answer for why you can't do the thing that you want to do? Whether it's repairing that relationship, whether it's that goal that you've always had, whether it's starting the business, writing the book, getting in shape, whatever it might be. Why aren't you doing it? Even when you know what to do, why isn't it happening? If that's something you desire, it's not up to me or anyone else to tell you what you desire. But if that is what you desire, what's in your way? And it's not going to be information. I don't think it's that. It's not going to be making sure that all your ducks in a row and you have everything aligned. It's going to be something deeper, and that something deeper is a limiting belief. And so that's the jumping off point. Is once you've identified that limiting belief, now what do we do with it? How do we turn it around?
So what do you see as the parallels between your two books then? Because when you say that, I think I read your last book, Indistractable, like a couple of times, right? And
Mm,
my forever strive to do more and handle more.
mm,
Now, then I'm merged into Paul's work, right? And it's like, oh, I probably am just doing way too much,
mm.
right? And so, yeah, you kind of have those things like, oh, I want to write a book, do a YouTube, whatever it is, right? But
Right.
those are all incredibly hard things. You need to focus on one, most probably. And so you have the indistractable path of like, well, this is how you can focus on the thing that you want to get done. But then you're saying like, maybe you can't do it if you don't believe you can do it in the first place.
100%. If you don't believe you can do it, you will not do it. That we can all agree that what's the number one reason we don't accomplish our goals? Number one reason, we quit. Simple as that. Not that perseverance guarantees success, but quitting guarantees failure. Right? Agreed? If you quit,
Yeah, yeah.
you will not succeed. So so given that fact, the indistractable model is all about is having a constraint. I think where people get into trouble is they think they can do it all at the same time. That's impossible. You can do it all. You can have it all, but not at the same time because there's a constraint that we all have to deal with, which is 24 hours in the day. So it's not up to me or anyone else to tell you what your goals should be. I don't care if you start a YouTube channel or write a book or repair a relationship with your mom or whatever it is you want to do. That's your business. Where it starts from is turning your values into time. If what you want to do is be with your kids all day or meditate or paint or scroll TikTok, I don't care. The problem happens, I think where misery happens is when you have an expectation of doing one thing, but you haven't planned that time to make it happen. So that's what time boxing is all about. The goal of time boxing is not to finish anything, right? That's a big misconception. People think time boxing is, and time boxing comes out of this research that's the most studied time management technique out there, the most validated is planning out. It's called setting an implementation intention, planning out what you're going to do and when you're going to do it, not finishing. Very important, not finishing. So when you say to yourself, I am going to work on this YouTube channel script from 9 to 10 a.m. in the morning, the goal is not to finish that task. The goal is to see how much you can do when you work without distraction. That's the point. Now, when you do that, you're going to be able to assess how long things take. The reason we have so much misery around time management is that we have no idea how long things take. So we have this lie that we can do it all at the same time. Sure, yeah, I can write my book and do the YouTube channel and have a happy family and start a side hustle and exercise and do all today. But we have no clue how long things take because we don't measure how long we can work for without distraction. So the idea is that when you time box, you're going to say to yourself, okay, I worked on this task without distraction for an hour. How long did I get? And then to finish the task, how many more time boxes do I need? And so that's an iterative process. And so when we do that, that's when we actually can figure out how much time we need to devote to something and what needs to be excluded from our day. So it all starts with turning our values into time. That's step one, is what do I actually value? What's important to me? And so what I provided in Distractible were these three life domains. First you, then your relationships, and then your work. And so when you look at your weekly calendar, you can say, okay, how much time does the person I want to become? That's my definition of values. Values are attributes of the person I want to become. So you can look at your calendar, you can say, okay, how much time does the person I want to become need to take care of myself? If I can't take care of myself, I can't take care of other people. So how much time do I want to take care of my body, to take care of my mind, to take care of whatever is important to me? I put that time in my calendar. Then my relationships, how much time, if I want to be an available father, if I want to be a loving husband, how much time in my calendar do I need for that? And then finally, your work. And so how much time do I need for what's called reflective or reactive work? How much time is in my calendar for that? Now, invariably, there will not be enough time. Never. I've never met a person who's done this exercise and says, oh, I've got plenty of extra time. There's always more to do than the time available, which is why in advance, we're going to make those trade-offs. We're going to say to ourselves, hey, you know what? Working on that book is not as important as being with my daughter. And so I'm going to spend a little bit less time on my book this week because I want to make sure I have time for my kid. But those trade-offs need to be made in advance, right? Because where regret comes from and misery comes from is when we look back and say, wait, what did I do with my time? Why was I spending so much time doing this when really my values are about something else over here? Is that helpful?
Yeah, and if anyone, for the people listening, I did that. I'm not sure if it was from your book, but it was like the time boxing, and then it was I can't guarantee that I'll complete the task, but I can guarantee I'll be there at the time and place that I said I'd be there to do the thing. That
Exactly.
was actually massive, like in terms of
Yes.
whatever work you have, if you just assign yourself to be in a place 9 till 10, and the only thing you're allowed to work on is the one thing you've prescribed for that block of time, was like, yeah, it was a revelation to see how long things take, right? Like,
Yes.
because you
Thank
just,
you.
yeah,
That is so true. That is so true. And I think this is the big myth that they think, well, if I don't feel like it, how can I possibly sit down and work and do this thing? I'm not inspired. I don't feel like it. I don't want to do it right now. Or what if I'm doing something else and suddenly I'm inspired? That is the path of misery right there. Because it's this expectation that work can only get done when I feel like it. Well, feelings are based on our beliefs. That's why I had to write Beyond Belief after Indistractable, that these feelings are subjective interpretations, right? They're not real, they're just beliefs. So not feeling like it, that is the recipe to quitting. Because the reason we quit is because it doesn't feel good. I don't want to. I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to write that book. I don't want to be with my kid right now. I don't want to. I'd much rather scroll YouTube videos because it feels better. It hurts if I do that hard thing. Whereas exactly as you said, when you have that time in your day and said, this is what I'm going to do, nothing might come out. It's okay. I might not produce anything. That's all right. It's part of the process. But for certain, if I don't plan the time at my desk, if I don't book that time, 100% won't happen. So at least with that other technique where I'm saying I'm going to make the time, and 99% of the time, actually, when you do sit down and do it, something will actually be produced, versus 100% won't happen if you don't book the time.
I think your book found, like that book, Indistractable, found me at a really interesting point. And I know we're talking about Beyond Belief right now, but just the whole time boxing concept met me
Mm,
at a really particular time when everybody else was talking about multitasking, and I could feel
mm,
myself pulled towards literally focusing on things. And it was permission to actually change a belief, a core belief, something
mm,
that I'd been trained to. I'm thinking I'm older than a lot of you guys, but it's like, it's like in my time, it was the thing to do to multitask and be super mom and to be able to do like
mm,
be the professional person and also run the home. And I could not understand why things were not working. And then when I read
mm,
Indistractable and I started doing the time boxing, and in particular, because it actually, I think I caught your book the year my father died. And it caught me at a moment when I realized that the people who were surrounding him at his bedside were his family.
mm,
And it literally tilted, like you were talking about lenses. It tilted
mm,
the lens as to, the most important thing you can do is focus on your family. You can spend
mm,
years and hours, focusing on your career, but those people are not by your bedside in those last months and years. It's like it is literally your family, and that with the time boxing exercise that you had on your website literally flipped the script for me and gave me total permission, which was I thought fantastic. And it just literally then from there I moved into flow, which
mm.
uses time boxing so well. So I
Beautiful.
think,
Well,
yeah.
thank you for sharing that. And sorry for your loss.
Oh,
Thank you so much
thank you.
for being vulnerable and sharing that. Can you tell me more about how you use flow? I'm curious about how you use time boxing with flow.
Well, I think for me, once I realized, obviously, it's like I said, this goes back to like being part of the teen, like 20 teens,
Mm,
and with multitasking being such a core identity,
mm,
or the way people were telling you you should be able to run your life. You could be super mom, you could be super, you could be doing well in your career, et cetera, et cetera. And I could not understand. So there was a whole bunch of things going on in my life, but I could not understand why I could not get the volume of product that I wanted out of myself. And when
mm,
I started time boxing, I realized a couple of different things. My first one was that I realized that I was my most creative time is my afternoon. And being a busy parent, that is when you're literally, when I got into flow was the moment I had to come out and go pick up the kids from school, take them to ice hockey, et cetera, et cetera. Like that's when, and cook dinner is like it interrupted the most productive part of my day. And once my kids went
mm,
to university, I came back on, like literally switched back on and became
mm,
productive again. And
mm,
that's actually one of the lessons I talk to young parents about, which is like, especially young mothers, is like understanding who you are, what your chronological clock looks like, and where you're
mm,
most creative is really important. Because as a mother, you can reconcile, okay, I used to be this person, I used to be able to produce this amount of work, and now I can't. And like that was unsettling. When you couldn't
mm,
do what you used to do before, like literally destroyed your soul because it took away the element of you that was who you thought you were, and you felt lesser, even though you had these
mm,
wonderful human beings that you were growing. But it was understanding that once that only came towards the end of my like having raised my three children. But once that happened, once I understood that math, once I got that psychology in my head, then I
Mm,
reconciled, okay, this is why it didn't work for me. And so now I started pushing that lesson forward to younger parents saying, figure out, just reconcile that you're not going to be able to write the book at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but can you do it by trading with another mother, trading with your parent,
hmm
with your husband, or trading, putting your kid in daycare or whatever. If that is
Yeah.
your zone, if your afternoon is your zone, now you can use it more productively. One day of the week instead of 5 days of the week, so that worked really well for me. But
Yeah, you can do
that
it all. You just can't do it all at once.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I do think, and Paul, going back to you, I was curious how the North American mindset, like having now spent more time in Asia, how that has, we use the word softened, how that has worked towards softening your attitudes. Because I think there's a very strong North American philosophy about how we manage and who we're supposed to be. And I think it's tempered by the Eastern cultures. So I'd be curious as to how that worked together
Yeah,
for you.
and Nir is in Singapore. He moved there 6 years ago, I
Okay.
think, as well. So, yeah, I think for me, though Singapore is a bit more Western than Taiwan. I think for me, Taiwan was permission to let go of those very Western, those weird Western educated, industrialized, I forget what it stands for, but those weird scripts and stories. You realize they are a big exception, and like I think I've definitely become a bit more Taoist. Um, like everything that's meant to be done will be done. That's probably like I do have that as like a belief. Um, I think for some people that's very unsettling and makes them it makes them like, oh, how would you actually accomplish anything? But yeah, I don't know. Stuff just sort of happens. And I'm not really doing much these days because I'm mostly just watching my daughter. I guess that's stuff that's happening. I think becoming a parent too, just like it's so obvious what needs to be done in the moment. Um, there's not really much like long-term thinking or planning. But yeah, I love living in Asia. I think I have a very hard time in the US. Like in the US, people's belief systems are very work centric, whereas like the
Mm.
work identity is above almost everything else. And what have you succeeded in lately? What have you achieved? I have personally really disconnected from a lot of those communities. Like even the author, I don't really identify like as an author or creator, which is definitely makes my life more challenging, but I don't know, just feels the most obvious and interesting direction to lean.
I do think it's part of the way things are naturally moving with the future of work as well. It's like it is that whole identity shift that's happening with the different eras. So,
Yeah, I mean, most of my work I was doing in my 20s is now like evaporated down to
mhm.
like a single prompt in Claude Code. So I think that's really cool. It's like, oh yeah, all the work I identified so strongly about has disappeared. Stephanie, what's on your mind?
Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I just want to say I'm really enjoying this conversation so far. Um, and my question is for Neil. So, sorry, Nir. Earlier in the conversation, you mentioned something about manifestation and how it doesn't really work. And I'm just curious, if it doesn't, then why do so many people still believe in it and do it?
Well, beliefs are tools, not truths. So people have believed in all sorts of things that aren't true for ages and ages and ages. Yeah, just social proof is not objective proof.
Mm.
Right? People believed in all kinds of crazy things before science showed that there might be evidence that concludes that something may not be the way that we think it is. And I think it does provide immediate comfort. There is a sense of satisfaction to thinking problem solved. Check. Like I'm currently vibrating at the frequency of the universe or whatever. My I made my wish, and so it's going to be granted. I totally see the psychological allure of the immediate satisfaction. Turns out that it's woefully incomplete. I don't think there's anything wrong with having long-term goals, long-term desires. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's about if that's what you want, how do you actually achieve it? I think there's a lot of psychological benefit to that sense of agency of, hey, I wanted something, I wanted a family and I got it. I wanted to build a business, I did it. I wanted to serve my customers, whatever it is, like having a dream and going for it, I think is wonderful. I think there's yeah, I think that's like having something you're really into is beautiful. But if there's a technique that is promoted out there that makes you less likely to do it and sets up this mirage, and that I think a lot of people profit from as well. There's always the next program. If you don't get what you desire, it's because you didn't vibrate hard enough or something. And of course, to learn how to get it, well, now you have to, buy my $5,000 course and now come on my meditation retreat so that we can teach you how to manifest better. That's where I think it gets into dangerous and exploitive territory, especially when the studies show it's not so effective.
I see, I see. Um,
Uh,
so so it sounds like you can, like, whether or not you have a belief in manifestation, it's all about taking action and having that belief in yourself to be able to go do it. Kind of like earlier when you mentioned God helps those who helps themselves. Did I get that correct?
Right, right. So as long as you are preparing, okay, so let's walk down the stack. So we know that the number one determinant of whether you achieve a goal is whether or not you quit. There's other factors, of course, resources, intelligence, skill, lots of other factors. The most important factor is whether or not you quit. Well, what's most likely to affect whether you quit, whether you stay motivated? Well, how do you stay motivated? You stay motivated by having the right beliefs that align your behavior with the benefit you're seeking. So that's the kind of the full stack. And I think what manifesting does, or this idea that, just let go and let God, what that does is it removes the action from the equation. You still have to behave in a way that will produce a future reality. So
Mhm.
beliefs affect your reality. They don't affect reality, right? They don't affect other people's reality. Where beliefs are very powerful is that they will change your behavior in order to change some kind of outcome, but it doesn't just magically occur. At least
Got
not
it.
from anything we've seen in the studies so far.
Uh-huh, uh-huh, I see. And I'm curious, Nir, if you are familiar with Carol Dweck's work, especially
Sure,
her book,
of course. Mindset.
Mindset. Yeah. I'm curious, like, do you resonate with most of what she talks about in there? Because a lot of it is similar to what you discussed earlier.
Yeah, so mindset is the superset of beliefs. Mindset is bigger than just any individual belief. So I'm a huge fan of Carol Dweck's work. I think she's done a remarkable job dispelling a lot of myths out there, which we could discuss as well. But yeah, I highly resonate with her work. I think she's a wonderful academic, and so mindset is kind of this superset of beliefs. What I wanted to do is like look at specific beliefs and how we can change targeted beliefs around my mother is too judgmental. I can't do this. I'm not ready. I'm too young. I'm too old. It's too late. This script of what I think is resonating in people's heads, at least in my head, I would constantly hear this script, this constantly, why this won't work, why this won't work, versus I don't think anybody hears their own mindset. But what she did, which was remarkable, I think she gave a great gift to the world, is being able for now us to see the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. That's very helpful. But we don't hear that voice in our head. We see it in other people, and we're happy to judge them, but we don't necessarily hear it in our own heads. What I wanted was a tool so that when I hear myself saying these limiting beliefs, these excuses, now I can identify them.
Okay, got it, got it. Thank you for that distinction.
Sure, my pleasure.
Um, yeah, I have more questions, but I would love to open up it up to other people on the floor. But yeah, thank you so much, Nir. And I just want to add that it's so awesome that you're in Singapore because my family's from Singapore too. I'm
Is that
not
where?
there, huh?
No, where are you now?
I'm not in Singapore at the moment. I'm in America.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, my family's from Singapore. I grew up going there all the time. So it's
Yeah, it's a very special place. Yeah, it's especially I think so there's part of the book where I write about prayer where I asked five religious leaders the same question. It sounds like a setup for a joke, but this is really what happened. I went to a rabbi, a priest, an imam, a swami, and a monk. Walk into a bar, right? And I asked them all the same question. Can you pray when you have uncertainties about God? And I think maybe the only place on earth I could do that would be Singapore. Because in Singapore, you literally have sometimes on the same street, you have church next to mosque, next to synagogue, next to a temple. It's amazing, and it was it's really beautiful how they have figured out racial harmony in a way that I have not seen in any other multi-ethnic society.
hmm Yeah, I agree. It's one of the things that makes Singapore very unique.
Yeah,
So I'm glad to hear you like living there.
yeah, it's been fun. Yeah.
And I'll turn it back to you, Paul.
Uh, Vipul, did you have anything? Cool.
Sorry, what was
What,
that?
Nope.
Nir, what, have you let go of any beliefs or like my phrase of softened in terms of being an author, living in Singapore? What are some big shifts you've gone under over the past few years?
Oh, I think the biggest is this separation of pain and suffering. That those used to be synonymous to me. And also another thing that was synonymous was sickness and illness. Those are two different things. I didn't know that. Pain is not suffering. Sickness is not illness. Sickness is in the body. A broken arm, cancer, those kind of things are in the body. Illness is in the mind. Illness is the perception. Emotion and feelings, two separate things. Emotion is a physiological response. Feelings are the psychological interpretation of that response. So the more we can separate these two things, the less we have to suffer. So that's
What what are some of the shifts you went through though?
so for example, uh with physical pain, I had this belief that when I felt pain, that had to lead to suffering. It doesn't. So I had terrible back pain, and I would go immediately because what does that mean? When I felt the signal of pain, that meant that what else could it be but suffering? So when is this suffering going to end? And should I go get some medical treatment? And what if that treatment doesn't work? And I've tried things in the past and they didn't work. And what if this lasts forever? And you see where this is going? This anxiety spiral that led to morphine, which led to more fear, which led to even more pain, which continued this vicious cycle. This is called the fear, pain, fear loop in pain reprocessing therapy. So when I change this belief, to answer your question, Paul, of disconnecting pain from suffering, because the research shows us that those are two separate things, that in fact, your brain is processing lots of signals, lots of information. 11 million bits of information is how much your brain is taking in right now. Light entering your retinas, the sound of my voice in your ears, the ambient temperature of the room. All this is information that your brain is processing, but your conscious attention is only 50 bits of information. So your brain is only processing consciously 0.000045% of all the data available to it. And so when I came across this research and realized that pain is just signal, pain is just information. So when I had back pain, it didn't have to necessarily register as suffering in my conscious awareness. In fact, in the book, I profile a guy by the name of Daniel Gisler, who goes under a 55-minute procedure where scalpel is cutting into flesh, where
Yeah, it was
metal
wild.
is yanked from bone, and he's under this hypnosedative state. And it's not uncommon at all. In fact, tens of thousands of people do it all the time, where he was able to undergo this entire surgery without anesthesia because he had learned this skill of refocusing his attention where he still registered the pain, he still registered the signal, but it didn't become suffering. So in my own life, how do I use that? Whenever I feel discomfort, whenever I feel I don't want to, this is going to hurt, this is going to suck, I'm not going to like this, I've learned to refocus that attention so that it doesn't have to become suffering anymore. How? Well, pain reprocessing therapy teaches us that one technique is to teach the brain that that signal of pain is not suffering. So what do I do? Now, sometimes I still get tweaks in my back. I'm 48, stuff happens. It's bound to happen that you're going to have pain at once in a while. So now I will literally do the same movement that hurts 10 times. 10 times. Before I would say, oh, don't move, immobilize, heat it, cool it, rest, don't, take medication. Not necessary. It's not always the case. Now I've trained my brain that every time I feel that discomfort, it's just signal, just information, just parts of that 11 million bits of information. And you know what? My back pain has gotten way, way better. Sometimes I still get a tweak here and there, but far, far less than it used to because my brain has become better at saying, nope, that's not dangerous. Nothing to be afraid of there. And so it's been able to tune it out. And so I can apply that in various areas of my life, whether it's my writing, my relationships, my health, lots of different areas.
Yeah, how do you think about I mean we do similar work. We're in this like creator economy. Um we don't get to decide how the economy evolves, right? And so the economy is like can laugh at our beliefs sometimes. I think things have changed a lot in the past few years. Like how have your beliefs come into contact with reality, and how has that evolved with like the business
Yeah.
of books, your career, how you think about spending your time and what's worth doing and things like that.
Hmm. It sounds like you have a belief. You said something like the economy laughs at our beliefs. Tell me what's the belief that the economy would laugh at?
Well, the economy is just transactions, trade-offs, prices, and it's a complex adaptive system, right?
Hmm.
We can put a book out there, and whether people buy it or not buy it, um, is somewhat in our control, but not totally, right? You're
Yeah,
competing against people buying other things
sure.
and the amount of money in the economy and awareness and all these things and the opportunities and trade-offs companies are making and how they're allowing you to use their algorithms to get attention at various prices. Um,
Yeah.
so given all the changing things you can't control, yeah, how have your beliefs evolved around like what you're doing, how you see yourself and things like that?
So we can't control the outcomes per se. Like those are facts. That's reality.
Yeah.
But we absolutely can control our perception of those outcomes. So changing the perception of suffering. So what is suffering? Suffering is the conviction that what is should be different. So if my book fails, okay, why is that bad? It's the judgment part that causes our suffering, right? That thinking the economy determines my book sales is bad. Is that bad? It's just a judgment. I used to think that determined my suffering, that only if these things happen, then I will be happy. Well, that means that that stuff has to change outside of me in order for me to stop suffering. That ain't going to happen. There will always be more reasons to suffer because I can't control what happens out there. I can only control what happens up here. So now what I've started to do is to realize that great, okay, terrific. Like my book bombs. It didn't. Nice, great. It's funny. Like with my other two books, I really wanted to hit the New York Times bestseller list. I really wanted to, sell a ton. It's not that I don't care. It's that I don't suffer. It's just signal. It's just information. My old belief would be if this book doesn't make it big, if it doesn't hit the New York Times bestseller list, that's bad. Let's flip it. Let's do a turnaround. This is what inquiry-based stress reduction is all about. That if my book doesn't succeed, I can be happy. I don't have to suffer. Could that be true? Yeah, it probably could, right? Maybe if my book bombs, that means that I'll have much more time to focus on my next book and I'll learn from that and I'll do even better that time. And that'll be interesting because now I'll be curious about this new problem to solve. And wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't that be exciting to like have this new challenge to dive into? Now, is that true? I don't know. I don't care. It's not a fact. It's a belief. And guess what? I can choose that belief. And that's so empowering. Like, this is so life-changing, folks. Like, isn't this mind-blowing? That like you control the dial for how much you suffer. You don't control the pain, you don't control the circumstances, you don't control the facts, you don't control anything that happens out there or in other people's minds, but you control the suffering. Like, it's just so much more free as opposed to AI is taking all our jobs and everybody's greedy and everybody's in it for themselves and the algorithms and this and the economy and the wars. Okay, why do I have to suffer?
Yeah. In some ways, like that is a very Buddhist stance. How do you reconcile that with some of your, I guess Buddhism is probably the least like woo religion, but do you find yourself coming closer to like Buddhism and things like this, especially living in Asia?
Yeah, it's tricky whenever we use a term like Buddhism.
Yeah, yeah, there's
There's
so many
there's
strands
so
and
many flavors, right? Like, but Buddhism in Singapore, even on one block, you'll get Buddhist
oh,
temples who
definitely,
think that
definitely.
that other Buddhist is completely wrong. So, so I don't know what that even means when you say more Buddhist. In terms of recognizing the distinction between pain and suffering, yes, I think the Buddhist tradition is the most closely aligned with that, and I highly, I revere that strategy. Actually, in that chapter, on when I went to talk to the five religious leaders, that's actually the lesson I learned from the venerable monk I spoke with, was this lesson around how to separate pain from suffering. And that's something that I took away from that conversation.
Karina,
Hi, I don't know if we have much more time left. So
I think
if
we
we
go
have,
till 10:30.
okay, perfect. So one of the things you raised just now was obviously the limiting beliefs, but also like, so I do a lot of work with younger generations around the future of work. And I think a lot of your questions um, or basically the work that I'm looking to feed into or feed off is this power of agency and changing your
Mm,
limiting beliefs. And like you've just had Artemis land back on Earth and stuff like that. It's like I think anything that opens up the horizons and changes people's view of what is possible, as opposed to boxing it in and making it smaller and smaller and smaller, is what I'm interested in. So
mm.
if what are the messages that you're feeding or you're seeing being most that resonate most with the younger generation out of your book?
Hmm. Well, the book just came out on March 10th, so I haven't had a ton of feedback from younger folks. Um, but what do I think? I'll tell you what message I think I would like them to know. I think so. There's this. I'm not sure if any. I know Paul started the book, but there's this study in the
I finished
beginning.
it.
Oh, you finished the whole thing? Wow, amazing.
I read
Um,
many books.
Oh wow, you're a fast reader. That's incredible. So there's this study this biologist by the name of Kurt Richter did in the 1950s, where he had these rats, and he was a biologist, and he had this question: how long could rats swim? And he took these rats, he put them in a cylinder of water, and he stood there with a stopwatch, and he figured out that a rat can swim for about 15 minutes before it gives up and drowns. Now he wanted to extend how long they would swim for. He wanted to see if there's an intervention that could extend how long they swam. And so he took a new group of rats, he put them in the same cylinders. He stood there with a stopwatch, and at the 15-minute mark where he saw that they were struggling, he reached in, pulled out the rat, dried it off, let it catch its breath, and then plunk back into the water it went. And the results of that study, I think, is something I would want everybody to know, especially young folks, because the rats swam longer. Now, for those of you who haven't read the book, I don't, Paul, I know Paul has, but Stephanie,
Not yet.
Vipul,
I've just
you
been
haven't read it.
traveling,
Okay,
so
good.
it's on my
Well, let's do a
list.
little poll. I want for the three of you. I think we only have about 3 people with us who haven't read. Um, let me ask you, how long the rats at first swam for 15 minutes? How much longer did the rats swim for after this intervention? After the rats learned that if they stayed motivated, if they persisted, they might be saved. How much longer did they swim for? Guess.
I'm gonna go for 45 minutes. Keep
45 minutes.
around.
So 3 times,
Yeah.
300% performance improvement. Amazing. Okay. Vipul,
Anyone
Stephanie,
else?
what do you think?
Double.
Double. Okay. Great.
2x.
100% improvement. Stephanie,
I was going to say double too.
double. Okay. So Karina had the most optimistic guess. She guessed 300% improvement for 15 minutes to 45
5
minutes. That
minutes.
would be amazing. Amazing. Imagine if I said, "Hey, I have an intervention for you that's going to triple how long you can sustain a task. You can write 3 times longer. You can run 3 times farther. You can, be 3 times more patient with your family, your friends, amazing. That would be incredible." The rats didn't swim for 15 minutes longer or 45 minutes longer, not even close. The rats swam for 60 hours, not 60 minutes, 60 hours of
Okay.
nonstop swimming.
It's also how you test if someone's read the book or not.
Yeah. No, it's good. So what does that tell you? Right? Why? How did the rats suddenly reveal what was always inside them? What changed? Their bodies hadn't changed. They didn't suddenly become super rats. Same exact rat bodies, same exact environment. As much as we talk about, oh, it's the environment, we have to shape our conditions in order to change our performance. The environment didn't change. Same cylinders of water. We can't ask the rats, but we think the only condition left was that something changed in their brains, that some switch was flipped, and suddenly 15 minutes became 60 hours of persistence. The lesson here is for us is, where do we stop at our 15 minutes? Back at our hierarchy, right? That to accomplish our goals, we have to make sure we persist. Why do we quit? And what's the number one reason we don't achieve our goals? It's because we quit. So if we can turn on this switch and suddenly persist far longer than we ever imagined, that we're all stopping at 15 minutes where we actually have 60 hours within us. If we could figure that out, what wouldn't we be capable of? Right? We have so much more within us, just like that power that we all have to moderate pain and suffering in our minds, right? That Daniel Gisler could undergo surgery without anesthesia. We all have that power. It's in us. We just don't unlock it. We have the power to swim 240 times longer, to be more persistent, but we keep giving up. We keep quitting because limiting beliefs, because of excuses, because of reasons that I think are outside of us rather than what we all have within us. So that's the message I would love to share with folks, is that, one, you do not see reality as you think, that what you think is reality is just that tiny keyhole of attention. None of us sees reality clearly, and that you're capable of far more than you ever imagined.
Thank you. I will be passing that along. It's something that I've been a version of that I've been using is around, I think, what everybody else calls EQ skills, but essentially talking about the elements of EQ skills that are actually what I call heirloom skills, the
Mm,
skills that are persistent generation upon generation, as opposed to technology upon technology. So it's like separating the EQ versus the IQ skills and saying the IQ skills have a shelf life, but the EQ skills are actually intergenerational. And
mm,
so, like, to me, this would fall in under that realm of
mm.
things that have been proven over time over mankind, the things that will
Yeah,
allow them to, take in the plow, take in the bicycle, take in, new technologies and still exist as a humanity. So
yeah, interesting.
I see
No, it
that as
reminds me of the prayer practice, right? Of
yeah.
that many times these things work even when we're not really sure why, or
Hmm.
they work, but not for the reasons we think they do. Right? So I'm not convinced that prayer is actually linking us to anything supernatural per se, but if it works, it works. Right?
Links you
Like,
to a deeper part of yourself.
maybe, right?
Yeah.
And frankly, even if it is placebo, who cares?
Yeah.
Placebos are super effective. We should use them more.
And in fact, even more so right now with all the electronics that we have around. And this is like way before electronics came around, but I remember my father, like when I was railing against going to church every Sunday, and he'd be like, "This is the 1 hour in the week where you get to just be with yourself." He says,
Great
even if you're
point.
not listening to the priest, you just go there, sit, don't be distracted. And I thought that was probably one of the best pieces
Yeah.
of advice I
Like
got.
the Sabbath, what the
Yeah.
rabbi told me, right? Like I don't believe in digital detoxes. I think that's not scientific at all. But there is something
Yeah.
valuable about proving to yourself, you know what, I can take a break. How
Mhm.
addicted am I to this is the biggest problem with this addiction narrative. You know, the word addiction comes from addictio, slave. So when we're constantly told by legacy media, right? The New York Times tells us that technology is addictive because it's their competition. They're in the same business. When we're constantly told this, we believe it. We believe we're slaves. So one of the best things about the Sabbath is that it proves to us, hey, you're not so addicted, right? Like you can quit.
Chill out. Yeah.
My grandmother was very religious and she smoked constantly. She was a 3 pack a day smoker. And she was the kind of smoker who would leave cigarettes in different places of the house because she would light up one cigarette before she'd even finished the last one. And you know what helped her quit smoking? Was that my dad, her son, told her, "Hey, you quit smoking every week. Every week on the Sabbath, because you're not allowed to light fire on the Sabbath.
So
Every
good.
week you quit smoking. How addictive is it if every week you keep smoking?" And that's why she quit. That's how she quit smoking forever because she said, "Wait, you're right."
Wonderful.
Stephanie.
Stephanie.
Yeah, I mean, to follow off of that, Nir, I was curious when you were writing your books, were there any limiting beliefs you had before you did? And then I guess in the process of it or after they were published, you kind of realized they were limiting beliefs and don't do them anymore.
Uh, so we talked about pain and suffering. That was a limiting belief I had. I think where do we start? I mean, I write books for me, right? Because I'm trying to
Hmm.
solve my own problems. I think this idea that I'm out of time, right? That's probably the most common limiting belief we hear these days. There's no time. There's no time. I'm too busy. That's
Mm,
bullshit. um, Thinking that that I had to suffer based on what happened outside of me. That was a big one we talked about earlier of like, oh, if my book doesn't succeed, if it doesn't hit the New York Times bestseller list, then that means that I can't be happy. I have to suffer. That's just a limiting belief. Um, a huge one in my relationships, right? That people have to change so I can be happy. How much time do we spend arguing with people? No, when you said this, that's what you meant. You meant to hurt me, and so I'm going to prove to you that it was a fact that you did this. It's silly. It's ridiculous that we don't even see our own reality clearly, let alone other people's realities. So how can we possibly think we can uh, know what we're talking about when it comes to when someone causes us offense? No, I think one of the limiting beliefs that I used to have is that people mean to hurt us. That that's a story, right? Like when someone would offend me, my family member or somebody like causing me harm. Now, as opposed to trying to change them, what's helped me is a liberating belief, I should say, of we're all operating with the tools we have. We're all just working with the tools we have. So asking people to be different is like asking them to speak another language. If I were to say, Stephanie, I'd like you to speak Latin from now on, please. You can't speak Latin. I don't know. Maybe you can. Can you speak Latin? No.
no, unfortunately.
So why would I expect you to be any different? It's not going to happen. Right. And so why should I suffer because I expect you to be any different? It's
Mm,
pointless. So I think there's endless limiting beliefs that were constantly running through my mind that I just don't need anymore. That they don't serve me.
hmm. And I'm curious, when you did have those limiting beliefs, where did they come from?
So all our limiting beliefs come from our past experiences. They're there to keep us safe. They're there to keep us passive. They're there to protect us. So it's our brain trying to do our best to make us to keep us alive by decreasing risk. And so whatever worked for me in the past is going to work for me in the future. So all these beliefs come from somewhere. That doesn't mean we need to blame our past. I mean, I have issues with trauma culture that I think trauma therapy and a lot of people kind of promote this idea that you have to find the source, and the source is probably your parents who probably said not nice things to you, and um, that could be true. Uh, to me, I haven't found it particularly useful. focusing too exclusively on the past to try and uncover who did what to me. One, because I don't think it gives us much grace. That when we try and figure out, okay, who put this thing in my brain, it doesn't make us very kind to those to others. Two, those memories are oftentimes false. That what we think happened in the past almost certainly did not happen the way we remember it. That memories are very fallible and malleable. Every time we remember something, we change it a little bit. And so what's much more useful to me is focusing on the here and now. What is this belief that I currently think is keeping me from from doing what I want or is keeping me in suffering, and then turning it around. But yeah, to answer your question, all of these beliefs come from our past experience.
Got it. Yeah, and I always found the fact that our brains are more malleable than we think very interesting, and how a lot
Mm.
of the memories that we have is not necessarily how we experience them, but how our brains interpreted them.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
sometimes I find myself like questioning my past and my past memories, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's wild.
I think that's a very healthy practice. In fact, it's there's a story in the book where I talk about a friend of mine, Chris, who I told that I was see him quite a bit, and so we were talking about the book over the years. And at one point, he tells me, this reminds me of why I have such trouble in my relationships. You see, I can't cry. I said, well, you can't cry. What do you mean you can't cry? He says, yeah, when I was a kid, when I was 6 years old, I went to a funeral. And I remember my cousin who died, everybody was so sad that my cousin had died. And I remember everybody was so sad. And I decided at 6 years old that I would never cry again. And that's why until this day, I have real trouble with relationships because when I get into an intimate relationship and my girlfriend sees I can't cry, it creates a lot of distance between us because there's situations where it's appropriate to cry and I just can't. Until I talked to my sister last week. He tells me, he says, I talked to my sister and I told her about the trouble that I have in my relationships and why this all stems back to the fact that when I went to this funeral when I was 6 years old and I couldn't cry. And she looks at him and she says, Chris, you didn't go to that funeral. You were at home with the babysitter. And he had created this false memory that he had gone to this funeral that he had never attended. And we do this all the time. And they feel like facts. They feel like, no, 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 I am this way because my mom and dad did this, or this happened to me in my life, and that's why I'm all the way. 100% guaranteed, even if it happened, it didn't happen the way you remember it. No way. Because we constantly remake our memories. Every time you remember something, you're altering a little bit, a little bit, a little bit every single time. So I don't think we can determine our present by looking for blame in the past. Now, we can say, I'm in the habit of doing something, or I have a certain belief about how I do something. And so that's why I do it this way. But that's up to me. I can't change what happened back then, right? It's not, to me, it's not useful. Now, in severe cases, when we're talking about, a war veteran who's struggling with PTSD, and sure, there's times I'm guessing we have to process. Even that, we're seeing that PTSD that's overly focusing on the past is also not adaptive. That can hyper fixate you on things that are outside of your control, versus what can we actually do today.
That's fascinating, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's a really cool story about your friend.
Mhm.
And just to finish it off, I'm curious, would you happen to know why our brains evolved this way to play with memory instead of just remembering straight facts or just like moments as they were?
Well, we don't know exactly. There's a lot of mysteries to the mind. Probably it's because our brains just can't hold on to that much information. I mean, even right now, your brain can't process all the information that it's inputting, that 11 million bits of information. Your consciousness just can't be aware of so much at the same time. Like if I told you right now, uh, stop listening to my voice and start listening to the hums in the room, like the ambient sounds. You probably hear those. I was talking to a friend of mine in New York, and I heard the siren. In New York, you always hear sirens, and I heard it on the phone call, the siren, and I stopped talking. And he said, "Hello, are you there?" I said, "Yeah, I just stopped talking because of the siren." And he said, "What siren?" Like I could hear it on the phone call in
Mm.
Singapore. I could hear the siren in the background. He couldn't hear it because he tuned it out,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
It's like the mind wants to filter what it only wants to experience.
Bingo. How is it filtered? Beliefs based on
Mm.
what
That's
the
the only way
brain.
to survive in New York.
That's right. Yeah. Based on what it believes is important. If he heard an explosion, yeah, he would have heard that because his brain would have said that's important. But hearing sirens go, that's just part of life. He tunes it out.
Hmm.
And so that's because the brain just can't deal with the 11 million bits of information. It can only process the 50 bits. So it has to determine what to pay attention to based on what it thinks is important, based on beliefs.
Got it. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for that.
sure.
How did you decide to write the book with Julie?
So Julie's my wife,
Yeah,
and
I know. Yeah.
yeah, she's my collaborator. So I turned into her an 88,000 word draft that I thought was perfect and done, and even my editors at the publisher thought it was perfect. And she came back to me and she gave me this look. She did this. So, and she put in so much work editing that draft. We didn't write together. She was the editor, and she put in so much work and was such a hero, and is kind of my check and balance in terms of the quality of my work that I appreciated so much that I wanted to put her on the cover. But we didn't write together. She was my collaborating editor.
That's so cool. I love that. Yeah, I'm doing a few writing projects with my wife now, so it's just
Oh
cool to
yeah.
see.
I don't know what I would do
Eh,
without her. I mean, she's my secret weapon because she makes my work so much better. Because you can't see it again, back to beliefs. Like it's interesting to me, then it's done, right? Like it's perfect. But you need that outside person to tell you where you can't see. I couldn't see what was wrong with it. I needed her to help me see because I'd been steeped in it so long.
I think you said before you like to promote your books for like 5 years. I don't know if I took that out of context, but how are you thinking about this book and what's next? You're obviously very driven. You said earlier you think always striving is very important. What's next for you?
It's a good question. I mean, I resonate with the pathless path of I don't know the necessarily the way to get there. But I'll tell you the mission that I remind myself, my mantra every day of why I do what I do, which is just a belief. It's not a fact, it's just a belief, which is my purpose is to explain the world so that it can be made better. That's my daily mantra. My purpose in this world is to explain it so it can be made better. Um, so that's what I want to keep doing. It's very motivating. Um it brings me a lot of joy. I'm honored when people like yourselves think it's interesting too. So yeah, I'm gonna keep writing. My daughter is 17 now and she's taken an interest in writing, and that's been incredible to
That's
see
so cool.
this little human that my wife made that I had a small part in, but that we're a very tight family. We homeschooled together, and so now seeing her interested in writing, and so we write twice a week together. So yeah, that's been really beautiful. So I'm gonna continue that. But I don't necessarily see it as book promotion. It's a topic that I think is super interesting and has helped me in my life. And one of the best ways to learn something is to teach it. And so every time I talk to folks like you about it, it's reinforcing my own priorities of what I want to improve on. So when I talk about, I constantly still have these limiting beliefs that they're never going to go away. I just can deal with them better. And so every time I teach others about it, it helps me with my own limitations.
Awesome.
I think you've picked
Any
a topic that's
final
really
question?
rich as well. So it's like it's not going to go out of fashion quickly. So you've definitely got a good 5 to 10 years run in there.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nir. Thanks everyone for joining this Interintellect Salon. And thank you to Anna and everyone else at Interintellect if you're listening to this later for creating this platform.
Thank you so much, everybody. Great to see you all. Take
Thank you
care.
for hosting.
Thanks. And thank you, Paul, for hosting.